Caution, language in this post may be inappropriate for sensitive viewers, and there's just a little snark too. Recall from a couple of previous posts the differentiation between a liar and a bullshitter. According to Harry G. Frankfurt, quote, "The distinction between lying and bullshitting is fairly clear. The liar asserts something which he himself believes to be false. He deliberately misrepresents what he takes to be the truth. The bullshitter, on the other hand, is not constrained by any consideration of what may or may not be true. In making his assertion, he is indifferent to whether what he says is true or false. His goal is not to report facts. It is rather to shape the beliefs and attitudes of his listeners in a certain way." Close quotes. Here are some perfect examples of what bullshit looks like. You know about Trump claiming to have had the largest inaugural crowd ever? Well, that's just stupid and quite unimportant bullshit, but bullshit nevertheless. Trump likes to claim that The Celebrity Apprentice was the #1 show on television. With the exception of one episode in one season, the show almost never even cracked the top 10. That Trumpian claim, too, is stupid and quite unimportant bullshit. Here's where bullshit becomes substantive. On September 25th, Donald Trump addressed the United Nations and said that his administration, quote, "has accomplished more than almost any administration in the history of our country," close quotes. That's a ridiculous claim, to be sure, but that wasn't the most important part. After a short pause for translations into the various languages of the attendees, the delegates in the General Assembly began a long, slow roll of laughter at Trump for his obvious grandiosity and the absurdity of his claim. That national humiliation hasn't happened before at the United Nations to anyone or to any nation, and it's clear and painful embarrassment for this country. But even that isn't the most important part. That came the next day. At a news conference, Trump said, quote, "They weren't laughing at me, they were laughing with me. We had fun. That was not laughing at me." So the fake news said people laughed at President Trump. They didn't laugh at me. People had a good time with me. We were doing it together. We had a good time. Close quotes. That was bullshit. Trump has made a laughingstock of the United States of America, in part through his bullshitting. Perhaps that's what he meant when he said over and over that only he could do so many things. And really, can you think of anyone else who could have accidentally had the entire world laughing at the United States? I repeat the clarity offered by Mr. Frankfurt, quote, "In making his assertion, the bullshitter is indifferent to whether what he says is true or false. His goal is not to report facts. It is rather to shape the beliefs and attitudes of his listeners in a certain way." Close quotes. Speaking of bullshit, let's be clear about a few things surrounding the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. Read the article from the Washington Post. It's linked in my written post. For all of Brett Kavanaugh's lies about Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's testimony in his testimony to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Kavanaugh even contradicted himself, so he makes himself a liar right in front of the committee. Further, the president, perhaps the Senate Republicans too, have hidden over 90% of the documents that pertain to Kavanaugh's record, including all of the documents pertaining to his time in the Bush White House, where the White House counsel team that Kavanaugh was on busied itself declaring that torture isn't torture. We're left to guess why they would shield Kavanaugh's documents from the Democrats and what dishonest and disqualifying things we might find among those documents. True, that's speculation, but just guess what the Republicans would be saying if the roles were reversed. That hiding of documents is an attempt to, quote, "shape the beliefs and attitudes of Trump's listeners in a certain way," close quotes, and it's presidential bullshit. Kavanaugh claimed to have had no participating in the torture memos, but we're left to wonder if he's telling the truth. As Senator Richard Blumenthal discussed with Kavanaugh at the hearings, falsus in uno, falsus in omnibus. False in one thing, false in all things. Brett Kavanaugh has shown himself to be fundamentally dishonest. I don't mean he fudged just a trifle. I mean he's a serial liar. Have a look at the video linked in the written post that reveals a series of lies he told the Senate Judiciary Committee in just the past few weeks. Kavanaugh has lied to Congress, both at the hearings for becoming a federal judge and in the hearings regarding his Supreme Court nomination. That's perjury. It's contempt of Congress, and it's a felony. Brett Kavanaugh on the bench? That's bullshit. Brett Kavanaugh belongs in jail. Likely you've heard that the FBI isn't interviewing dozens of witnesses, some say as many as 40, who could help to shed light on what happened or what did not happen between Dr. Ford and Brett Kavanaugh. Many of these witnesses have volunteered to be interviewed, and the FBI hasn't even returned their phone calls. Translation: Trump has put the blinders on the FBI and prevented them from doing the kind of thorough, professional investigation they customarily do. Trump's investigation isn't about truth or falsity. Quote, it is rather to shape the beliefs and attitudes of Trump's listeners in a certain way, close quotes. In other words, it's bullshit. Answer this question. What kind of country do you want? We may not know one another, but I'm willing to bet that your answer doesn't include bullshit in our highest public offices. Next question. What are you willing to do to get what you want? You know where this goes. It comes down to us getting off our butts and advocating for what we believe in. It comes to us knocking on doors to spread the word. It comes down to us voting. It comes down to us bringing others to the polls with us, people who otherwise wouldn't vote. Because if we don't do that, someone else, perhaps a bullshitter who wants a very different America from the America you want, will do all of that, and they'll get their way because they'll be the only ones talking and voting. It comes down to us. You know what to do. One last thing. I've seen nothing about it in the press. I haven't found a word written nor a word spoken about the debt we owe to three men in particular. I speak, of course, of Lindsey Graham, Brett Kavanaugh, and Chuck Grassley, who speak for so many. It has been a long time coming to unshackle this marginalized group and to let fly the voices of a people who have suffered iniquities for so long. At last, we are hearing the voices of the long-suffering, rich white men of America. Each of these men has shown us the way as they let fly their pent-up anger at those who have been mean to rich white guys. They snarled and they spit and they sneered. They vented their emotions for all to see and at last led us toward the promised land, the true path of America for its real citizens, rich white men. Forever may she wave with gilded edges in rooms of elegance, the red, white, and blue. I'm Jack Altshuler.